We have multiple Leafs updates to go over today as they have made some more surprising moves as Craig Berube continues to put this lineup in a blender ahead of tonight's big game, and to break down those moves and discuss what it means going forward, as well as a couple big injury updates. A lot to go over today, but before we get into it, if you're a part of the percentage or aren't subscribed to the channel, it's the place to be for daily Leafs content, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. And a quick reminder, we will be live following tonight's game, and this is probably another must-win game for a lot of Leafs fans out there because they are continuing their push towards that Atlantic Division spot, which they're falling behind in. But Darius, a lot to go over today, and obviously the Leafs play the Flames tonight. Craig Berube has put the lineup back in a interesting blender, and one that fans are a little bit fired up about for a couple reasons. So we'll dive into all that on this episode, but let's dive right into it. And we're going to start with the light hitting stuff, and then we'll dive into some of the big changes that Berube made. But for the first time in a little bit, we've seen Max Pacioretty and Yanni Hakanpää on the ice early this morning getting some work in. So you can see them there with the whole team wearing the St. Paddy's Day uniforms. And before we dive into the updates here, I just want to get your thoughts on the possibility of Patches and Yanni Hakanpää getting back into the lineup, maybe specifically, obviously, Max Pacioretty. If we can get what we saw from him in the first 10 games of the season for the playoffs, there could be a world we see him again in a Leafs uniform.
Yeah, a couple things to note. Just a reminder to all Leaf fans that tonight is an Amazon Prime game. Again, it's a 7:30 start, or so they say. So expect it to start around 8 o'clock, and obviously St. Patrick's Day, so they'll be wearing the St. Pat's jerseys. But in terms of the injury updates, I don't think we're going to see either of these guys before the playoffs. It just won't work with the salary cap if there isn't another injury in the lineup to bring them back. So I think that they're going to stay on LTIR until the playoffs. Max Pacioretty, I can definitely see getting back into the lineup again if there is an injury or in the playoffs. I could see that happening. I don't know exactly where he'll fit. I don't think the Leafs know what's going on with their lineup, and we'll get to that in a second as well. But in terms of Hakanpää, I'm not sure he's going to play again this season either. He hasn't drawn into a game since obviously he played 2 games earlier this season. Then he had another procedure on his knee done. So I'm not so sure about him. I wonder if he sticks around. If the Leafs do end up going far in the playoffs, like maybe second or third round, maybe you end up seeing him if there are some injuries, because of course those happen over the course of the playoffs. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. But unless there is an injury to the immediate roster, the roster that we've been seeing on a night-to-night basis, I don't think we'll see either of them until at least the playoffs.
Yeah, and Pacioretty is the one that interests me. Yanni Hakanpää maybe can make some playoff impact, but Pacioretty could man that third line, fourth line. We saw him as high as the second line at some points in the season. But a few more updates now. We'll dive into stuff as it pertains to tonight's game. Joseph Woll is starting his first game in a week, and it's against the Calgary Flames. The last one he started was in Utah, where he had a pretty rough start there, and then gave up a 3-0 lead, and then kind of came back towards the end and helped him win. But let's dive into some of the lines today, and it is back to something we're a bit more familiar with. Nyes, Matthews, Marner, same we've seen. Holmberg, Tavares, Nylander, also the same. McMahon, Domi, Robertson, also the same. And then Lorentz, Lawton, Yarncroke. So they put the guy you paid a first-round pick in Scott Lawton down to the fourth line. They put the first 2 lines back together. We'll dive into the defensive pairs here in a minute. But David Kamp's on the outside looking in again for the second straight game. They didn't give much of a chance to this experiment here.
No, they gave about 1 game. So they said, hey, that didn't work. And Craig Berube and company said, you know what, let's go back to what also wasn't working about a week ago. So I'm not sure about the thought process there. I honestly thought the first line looked okay on Saturday. I thought they were creating chances. And honestly, I thought the Leafs, at least in the third period, had sustained pressure for a lot of the period. So I don't know why they're going back to this so soon, because a lot of the lines that you're looking at right here are very similar to what we've seen almost all season at times. Holmberg back up on the second line too is very interesting to me. I don't think he's been necessarily awful or anything like that, but did you pay a first-round pick for Scott Lawton to play him on the fourth line? We're going to get to a quote from Berube in a second on that and what he thinks and why he's doing this, and it could make some sense, but it's still a little mind-boggling to me. And that third line is the third line that was playing well at stretches throughout this season, so I wonder if they're trying to create something with that. So we'll see how it goes tonight, but the blender's been out. I'm assuming the blender is going to stay out during the game, so it really depends how the game goes.
Yeah, a lot of fans are upset about Holmberg on the second line. Lawton, I mean, yeah, it makes sense if you want to, and we'll get into Berube's comments in a minute, to add some length to the lineup, but I don't know. I thought he played pretty good last game, all things considered, but looking at the defensive cores, you have McCabe, Tanev, Riley, Carlo, Benoit, OEL, so an interesting group here now. Obviously, McCabe, Tanev, and Riley now and Carlo slipping to the second pairing. We saw some interesting things to start last game. It wasn't even. It was OEL and Carlo, I believe it was, so Riley and Carlo were separated for a bit there, so interesting stuff to keep an eye out on there. And looking at the power play units, no matter how you shake them up, they're never going to be good, it seems like, for this team. But you have Marner, Matthews, Nylander, Tavares, Nyes, so of course the five forwards, and then you have one with OEL manning the back end. I mean, at the end of the day, the power play has been awful. It needs to be better. The lines are an interesting. I mean, I don't love it. I would have liked to give one more chance, though I was expecting Berube was going to change it mid-game last time, so I'll take that for what it is. But Craig Berube did dive into a couple more comments here, and he went on to say that we got to get that battle level and that urgency level up. Guys understand that. They're not very happy right now. They're upset about things, and they're mad, so that's a good thing. So that's interesting. I mean, fair enough. I'd hope you're mad. He also went to say, surrounding specifically Scott Laughton on that fourth line, just success that we've had in the chemistry they have. I wanted to create a line with Laughton and Lorentz and Yarny of more of an identity line, a checking line. So we gave up a first-round pick for a fourth liner. Now, if it works, sure, it doesn't really matter. However, it is I don't know how much that's going to help Scott Laughton's case with the fourth line partners, being Yarncroke and Lorentz, although they're both very good. Fourth liners, Laughton's probably, it's interesting because the sentiment now after that first round pick is, why do we give up a first round pick for a fourth liner?
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people are looking at that this morning. And honestly, like I said it earlier in the video, like, did you really give up a first round pick for a fourth liner? But with that being said, if this works and the top guys go back to playing well and the dynamic of the team, excuse me, it changes so everything works and there is an identity throughout the lineup, kind of like the St. Louis Blues in 2019, then that's fine to me. If it works and they have an identity and they have a purpose for the team, that's totally fine to me. But we'll see if it ends up working that way. I still think Scott Laughton should be, because not so much because of the way that the Leafs lines work out, but because in the playoffs, you'd probably need him at third line center in terms of the matchup game against another team, right? You do have to think about that. So again, the blender's out. They're just trying things. If it works, fantastic. If not, he'll probably go back to third line center, right? There's no real, harm in that, I guess. But to get back to something you were saying before, Nick, I mean, the penalty kill has been horrible as well. You mentioned the power play. I'm pretty sure the penalty kill right now is 30th in the league. Yeah. It's awful, absolutely awful. So that's something that's got to come up as well. And in terms of the defensive pairings too, they were really in the blender last game too. I think Benoit was skating at one point with Carlo. I think OEL was back with Riley, which is the most played pairing on the team all year, I think. So they're really just trying everything at this point. And then in terms of the power play, they have to get something going tonight. If they don't, then I'm seriously concerned. I think it is the personnel still, honestly, because power play 2 gets very little time, but when they do, I feel like they create more chaos and more chances, like even if it's for 30 seconds. So I wonder if they take a look at trying some of those guys instead, not necessarily a mix on power play 1, like literally just starting power play 2. Other teams have done this and it's worked in the past. So I wonder if they take a look at that, but we know the way it goes with the Leafs. Sometimes it's status quo with these things. So that is unfortunate, but they got to get going tonight. They have to be way, way, way more direct.
Yeah, a few other things here. Matthews was at the morning skate. He looks ready to go, and hopefully he can look healthy tonight. Nylander, you can see them in their St. Patty's Day uniforms. It's going to be an interesting one. And you see some of the comments from William Nylander. I don't think that we got to our game until at some point in the third period. We covered that a little bit yesterday, but it's a good point heading into tonight's game. They're not playing to their level right now. Got to simplify a little bit. That's it. And on details that need to improve all over the ice, D-zone, power play, PK, O-zone, how we're playing with the puck, everything's got to get dialed up a notch. So going to be interesting, going to be a wild one, because quite frankly, if they lose tonight, I think everyone's going to be in chaos, because this is another Nick guarantee must-win game. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know down below your thoughts, and we'll be live following tonight's game.